So, it's time for another simple-ish guide to a race. It seems as though people like this series, if you want to call it. So we'll keep doing these if people enjoy them or find them useful in any way at all, but let's get on to it. Ever since the first Daytona 24 Hours race took place 60 years ago in 1962, the event has gone through many different variations in terms of the type of sports car machinery that has taken part in this race. From the original Ford GT to the Group 5 cars, the GTP/Group C prototypes, the Grand Am cars, up until the modern day, which utilises the DPI cars. That's not going to last much longer though, as next year the exciting new era of LMDH will make its highly anticipated first impression. I could spew out a few more facts, however I think it's best we just get on with it, as this video is more than likely going to be over 20 minutes or so let's crack on. For the classes, I'm only going to go over the new class for this year, Gtd Pro, as I have covered all the other classes already in my guide to last year's Petite Le Mans. However, here is our new class, which is going to replace the outgoing GTLM cars. As you can probably guess from the title of the class, it is GTD but with all the driver lineups being Pro, or at the very least, the teams can pick whichever drivers they so wish. Whereas with GTD, in the Daytona 24 Hours, you have two drivers who can't be rated any higher than Silver, and two drivers who can be whatever the team wants. The cars are still all the same GT3 based machinery, except the Corvettes, which are the same as last year's GTLM cars, but have been heavily altered in terms of the balance of performance to make sure that they are on a fair footing with the GT3s. To help distinguish which car is in which class, then the GTD Pro cars will have red number boards, whilst the GTD cars will have green ones. I hope that has cleared everything up on that front. Beginning with Action Express Racing in the DPI class, and once again we have a two-car entry for this team. For the full season entry in car 31 we have former Mazda DPI driver Tristan Nunez, Pipo Derani, who has been with the team since 2019, Mike Conway, and, well, nobody else. They've decided to stick to just three drivers in this car. Whilst for their second entry, which is being run with the support of NASCAR powerhouse Hendrick Racing, Jimmy Johnson will be joined on his endurance adventure by Mike Rockenfeller, Kamui Kobayashi, and for the first time, Jose Maria Lopez. Meyer Shank Racing have heavily altered the lineup from last year. In comes another former Mazda DPI driver, you'll hear that a lot, in Oliver Jarvis, as well as a name that most people didn't expect to see in the seat, Tom Blomqvist. Alongside both of them are two drivers with 5 Indy 500 wins between them, Simon Pagenaud and Helio Castroneves. For the other Acura of Wayne Taylor Racing, it's all very familiar. Ricky Taylor and Felipe Albuquerque return, whilst Alexander Rossi is joined by his former teammate at Manor F1 in 2015, the only newcomer in at Wayne Taylor Racing, Will Stevens. Despite not having the best of years last year, JDC Miller won the 2021 Sebring 12 Hours, so clearly they still have that winning instinct. For this race, Ben Keating will add the DPI car to his long list of cars he has raced in the big endurance races, whilst alongside him is Tristan Vautier, Loic Duval and newcomer Richard Westbrook. Chip Ganassi are going all guns blazing after agonisingly missing out on last year's Rolex 24 with a late race puncture. To spearhead their two-car entry into this race in the 01 car is Renger van der Zande, Sebastian Bourdais, Scott Dixon and the current IndyCar champion Alex Palou. Now I should apologise after making a comment in my previous guide which said that this would have been Kevin Magnussen's last race for Ganassi. As we have though now discovered in early January, that will not be the case. Sorry I can't read the future. Earl Bamber and Alex Lynn will be joined by Magnussen and another IndyCar driver in Marcus Ericsson. On to LMP2, and we start with last year's winners of the class, Era Motorsport. Sadly not adopting the fantastic crown livery from last year, but we have absolutely zero change from last year's lineup. Dwight Merriman, Ryan Dial, Carl Tilley and Paul-Loup Chatin. Who would have thought that a Dutch supermarket tycoon would have had the interest in racing in the United States-based series? However, here we are, and it is great to see them here once again. Fritz van Eer, Dylan Murray, Rinus VK, and a person who likes his F1 memes, Guido van der Garde. Other than John Farano, the driver lineup at Tower Motorsport is rather different from previous years. Louis Delatraz joins the full-time lineup, whilst for the endurance races it's, I'm fairly sure, the first Angolan driver to race in the Daytona 24 Hours, Rui Andrade, and former Aston Martin DTM driver, Ferdinand Habsburg. Surely the entry that will get the most attention in this category is the Dragon Speed Oreca. Eric Lux will be joined by 3 2022 IndyCar drivers, Devlin DiFrancesco, Colton Herta and Pato O'Ward, and that is certainly the sort of lineup to get people to assume that it's a certain win, either I'm not so sure. More on that later. A crown jewel endurance race would feel somewhat incomplete if we didn't have an entry by the always competitive sports car powerhouse of United Autosports. Jim Maguire will be joined by the ever-consistent Guy Smith and Phil Hansen, and it's a pleasant return for Will Owen, who took a few years of retirement. A two-car entry is what Pierre Tyson will be doing in IMSA for this season. We'll start off with car 52, where the lineup is a copy and paste of last year's Daytona 24. So we welcome back Ben Keating, again, and also driving two cars in the same race, again. Scott Huffaker, Mikael Jensen and Nico Lapierre join him. In the second car, whilst a new entry from PR1, it's not exactly alien to IMSA given that it's basically a continuation of last year's Win Autosport entry, only now it's mainly run by PR1. Stephen Thomas will be joined by Josh Pearson and former Mazda DPI drivers Jonathan Bomarito and Harry Tinknell. High Class Racing will be partaking in the full IMSA season this year as the Danish-based squad look to build a bigger presence in the US. The usual pair of Dennis Anderson and Anders Fjordbach will be joined by two Swiss drivers, Fabio Scherer and DTM sensation Nico Müller. Making their debut in IMSA with a two-car entry, Algar Pro Racing with the G-Drive are looking to make an instant impact, and they certainly aren't messing around. In car 68 is regular IndyCar driver Ed Jones, Francois Hérault, Formula 3 driver Oliver Rasmussen, and the trump card in one of racing's best talents, René Rast. Meanwhile, in car 69, no comments please, we have John Faub being lined up with James Allen, who has no relation to the former F1 commentator, another current Formula 3 driver in Tijmen van der Helm, and now a regular in GT3 racing, Luca Giotto. Over to LMP3, where we begin with what I would say is the most experienced lineup in this class in core autosport. Team owner John Bennett will have his regular co-pilots alongside him in Colin Brown, whilst George Kurtz and Swede Nick Jonsson complete the set. Jonsson's last start in IMSA was in 2017, ironically with this team. Of course, the entry that will garner the most interest, just because of the synonymous team name, is Andretti Autosport. Jarrett Andretti will be joined by up-and-coming talent Rasmus Lind, former IndyCar driver Gabby Chavez, and making an impressive debut with the team at Petit Le Mans, Josh Burden. In what you would certainly call a diverse lineup, Performance Tech will have Dan Goldberg back once again, Garrett Grist, who never fails to deliver in an LMP3 car, Nico Pino, whose experience in sports cars is somewhat limited, and Hikaru Abe, whose experience on racing in general is also somewhat limited. Still, every chance they could surprise. Just one car for Riley Motorsports this year, and it's the ever-distinctive 74 that returns. So does Gar Robinson, where he hopes this time that Brazilian stock car champion Felipe Fraga will be able to join him. Dutch Porsche racer Kai van Berlo and GT racer Michael Cooper complete the lineup. The only team to run two cars in the race this year in LMP3 are the Belgian-based team Mjolnir Motorsports. Car 6 will include Efren Castro, Moritz Kranz, someone who has a very familiar name in the racing world, Ayrton Ori, and ex-Mazda DPI driver, yep another one, Joel Miller. Whilst for car 26, it has a very young lineup that are mostly trying to pursue a career in IndyCar, those being Nolan Siegel and Cameron Shields. Joining them are Charles Cruz and a very underrated talent in the form of Hugo de Wilde. After bringing their IMSA tenure last year to a premature halt, Sean Creech Motorsport are back and hope this time to go for the full season. Dr. Lance Wilsey and Joao Barbosa return, however we have a few new faces after that. Malte Jacobsen made his IMSA debut at Petit Le Mans last year, and Sebastian Priaulx I'm sure will try to emulate his father's success. Making their debut in IMSA's top series is AWA Autosport. After driving McLarens in the Michelin Pilot Challenge, the team makes a switch to Dakins. Ore Fadani and Kuno Wittmer are the two usual faces who transition over to the programme, with Lars Kern and someone who seems to be racing with a different team every IMSA race he does, Matthew Bell, joining them. 47 Motorsports were the last team to officially confirm their driver lineup, although that was only known if you went through a certain sports car racing news website. Either way, Mark Kavame is joined by Trenton Estep and Austin McCusker, whilst Antoine Duquesne will make for a lineup that will go under the radar. Time for the first GTD Pro lineups of the season. Vassar Sullivan and the Lexus operation stay at 2 cars, but with 1 in each class. The GTD Pro car will have 3 drivers, and even though it does include a silver-rated driver in Carl Kirkwood, which, considering he'll be an IndyCar after winning Indy Lights last year, is a bit silly, the British pair of Ben Barnicoat and Jack Hawksworth will make for a tremendous trio. A terrible attempt by me there at alliteration. Anyway, on to the Faf Motorsports Porsche, which will be moving up to GTD Pro this year with 3 factory Porsche drivers. Matt Campbell, Mathieu Jaminet, and one of the newest members of Porsche's roster, Felipe Nasr. A great addition to GTD Pro is an Aston Martin Vantage being entered by Heart of Racing. The trio of drivers hoping to warm the cockles of your heart are Alex Riberas, Ross Gunn, and someone who's been a regular in the DTM scene, Maxime Martin. The pace of the Corvettes is a massive unknown at this point given the fact that they haven't so far run in GTD configuration in a race situation, so at the moment your guess is as good as mine as to whether the Corvettes will be as fast as the other normal GTD based cars, too fast for them, or too slow. The only way we're going to get any indication of the ideal scenario of these cars being the same speed as the other GTDs coming true is when the green flag drops. In terms of the lineup across the 2 cars, we only have 1 newcomer from last year. In Car 3 we have no changes, Antonio Garcia, Jordan Taylor and Nicky Katzberg. For Car 4 it's Tommy Milner and Nick Tandy with newcomer Marco Sorensen. The ever-popular Ferrari squad of Risi Competizione will have a presence once again in IMSA, and although only Daytona is confirmed, everybody is hoping that they'll be able to find the funding to do a full season. In another full Ferrari factory driver roster, Risi will be hoping for good things from Daniel Serra, Davide Rigon, James Collado and Alessandro Pierguidi. WeatherTech Racing take another deep dive into GTD Pro with the Porsche as Cooper McNeil is up for a challenge. However, he'll be joined by some pretty decent pilots in the form of ace GT3 drivers Julian Andlauer, Matteo Cairoli and Alessio Picciarello. WeatherTech Racing will also field another entry, but this time a Mercedes where... Wait, is that Cooper McNeil again? Right, apparently it is. Well, in that case, he really is up for an almighty challenge. In this car though, as you'd expect, he's joined by ace Mercedes GT3 drivers Jules Gounon, Daniel Juncadella and Mauro Engel. There is a third WeatherTech entry, but it's not being branded as a WeatherTech Racing entry. That's because it's being run solely by Proton Competition, which run all the WeatherTech entries. The Proton Mercedes will have 3 drivers racing for them. Cooper isn't one of them, but we do have Patrick Assenheimer, NASCAR driver Austin Cindric and Dirk Muller. The big M8s and M6s have gone, and now we have the new M4s. Unfortunately, I think the memes though for BMW won't end. Instead of jokes relating to the size of the car, it will most likely revolve around the rather distinctive front grille. However, it won't stop the factory-run team from being seen as one of the favourites to win the category. Car 24 has Philip Eng, Marco Wittmann, Nick Yeloli and Sheldon van der Linde. Meanwhile, for Car 25, it's a lineup that if you've watched IMSA before, you're probably going to be pretty familiar with the names in this one. Conor De Filippi, John Edwards, Augusto Farfus and Jesse Crone. With a lineup that probably sends shivers down the spines of the other teams, KCMG are going hard on their IMSA debut. There's every chance you haven't heard of the team. I get the feeling though you probably will by the end of this race. Lawrence Vantour, Patrick Pile, Alexandra Imperatori and Dennis Olsen are the formidable quartet. The final entry in this 13-strong GTD Pro class comes from TR3 Racing, who have entered what is in essence a full factory Lamborghini effort. The team may be making their IMSA debut as well, but they've been given the Italian manufacturer's finest factory drivers. Rolf Eneischen, Mirko Bortolotti, Andrea Caldarelli and Marco Mappelli. Finally, onto GTD. Turner Motorsport is once again back in IMSA running a BMW, and it's a brand new M4, after being one of the first customer teams to have received the M4 GT3. The drivers are very familiar faces in the Turner Motorsport squad: Robbie Foley, Michael Dynan, Jens Klingman and the ever-present BMW racer Bill Oberlin. Team Hardpoint will be sticking in the GTD class with their Porsche. It will also be, like they did in last year's Petit Le Mans, the only team to field a female driver, and once again, it's Catherine Legg. Joining her is Rob Ferriol, Nick Boole, and a pleasant surprise in Stefan Wilson. Wright Motorsports are back once again. The distinctive Porsche will be one of the favourites in this class, as the team always goes well wherever they race at. Ryan Hardwick will be glad to be back after being injured last year. Zachary Robichon, Jan Halen and brilliant Porsche factory driver Ricard Lietz join him. Team TGM are back for another Daytona-only effort, and this year will be in a technical alliance with Wright Motorsports. The team weren't exactly quick last year, but although the lineup is the same as last year, it's great to see them on the grid once again. Team owner Ted Giovannis will be joined by Owen Trinkler and brothers Matt and Hugh Plum. The second Heart of Racing Aston Martin mixes experience and youth, with Roman DeAngelis and Tom Gamble making up the youth element, whilst Ian James and Darren Turner make up the experience bit. Darren has completed in 414 races in his career, with some of them trying to help Jason Plater in British touring cars, not that that was his main focus. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be a commentator and a racer all in one race? No, probably not, and neither have I, but Townsend Bell will answer that for us. He just doesn't seem to know, though, when to retire, despite saying he wants to wind down his career. Bell is joined by Richard Highstand, Frankie Montecalvo and Aaron Tielitz. McLaren will finally be represented in the Daytona 24 Hours in GTD with Crucial Motorsports. John Miller and Patrick Gallagher will be joined by Paul Holton and Lance Bergstein, who is a diabetic, so just from a story perspective, it's pretty darn cool and inspirational if you ask me. Last year's GTD winners, Windward Racing, will hope to do the same thing this year with a lineup that is not too dissimilar to the lineup last year. Russell Ward is once again joined by Philip Ellis and Lucas Auer, with the only newcomer being Michael Grenier, whom not many people know tested an IndyCar. Meanwhile, Allegra Motorsport does return to IMSA this season, but in what capacity is somewhat uncertain at this stage, and it all depends on how many sponsorship dollars they'll be able to receive. They are confirmed though for Daytona, and it's the usual pairing of Michael de Quesada and Daniel Morad, joined by talented Indy Lights star Linus Lundqvist and reigning DTM champion Maximilian Gertz. The only accurate NSX GTD to be run in this race is by Gradient Racing. The team are experienced IMSA competitors but have mainly competed in the Sprint Cup, which doesn't include events like Daytona. The lineup though shouldn't give them too many difficulties in terms of getting up to speed. Till Bechtelsheimer, Mark Miller, Kevin Simpson and Mario Farnbacher. Paul Dall'Anna and his relationship with Aston Martin continues at the Rolex 24. Racing alongside him is 2017 Porsche Carrera Cup GB champion Charlie Eastwood, one of racing's most colourful characters, Nicky Thiem, and someone whose talent is very much underrated, David Pittard. For TR3 Racing though, they'll be fielding another entry, this time in GTD, in a lineup that is full of experience. Mostly. Bill Sweedler and John McGrew will be joined by Jeff Segal, whose last IMSA start came in 2019, as well as highly touted up-and-coming Lamborghini driver Giacomo Altoe. Now, albeit not a full factory effort, considering it's being run by Ferrari powerhouse AF Corsa, it's not too far off of one. The quartet of drivers seen as one of GTD's favourites include Simon Mann, Niklas Nielsen, an ace in Ferrari's Tony Villander, and someone who's the owner of one of racing's best team names in Mad Panda Motorsport, Luis Perez Companc. I hope that team enters this race at some point. Either way, on to Car Barn with Peregrine Racing, where a few changes are afoot, as they've abandoned the Audi R8 and swapped it with its sister car, the Lamborghini Huracan. The drivers are Indy Lights regular Robert McGuinness, Corey Lewis, Jeff Westphal, and someone with speed in abundance with the Huracan, Sandy Mitchell. After switching from the Lamborghini to the Acura last year, Magnus Racing are switching manufacturers again after struggling with the Acura. Going to the Aston Martin Vantage this year for an endurance-only programme are John Potter, Andy Lally, Spencer Pompelli, and British GT champion in an Aston GT3, Jonathan Adam. Gilbert Korthoff came completely out of nowhere in 2021, announcing midway through the season that they would be racing with a Mercedes in GTD. This year, it's a full season of IMSA competition for them. Coming along for Daytona is Mike Skeen, Scott Andrews, the somehow silver-rated Stephen McAleer, and an extremely late replacement in James Davison. The team that has spent recent seasons in the World Endurance Championship with a Dallara LMP2 and a Ferrari 488 GTE, for this year will be an IMSA-only programme for Cetilar Racing with the GT3 Ferrari. Roberto Lacorte, Giorgio Sergio and Antonio Broco will be joined by Alessio Rivera in the AF Corsa Run car. Sun Energy One Racing is back with a very distinctive Mercedes again, plus for the drivers that will be piloting it, it will go like it's on fire as well. See what I did there? Alright, moving on. Kenny Habul has three extremely rapid Mercedes GT3 drivers in Fabian Schiller, Lukas Stoltz, and in my opinion one of racing's best drivers, Raffaele Marciello. Another team that is also switching from Audi to Lamborghini is NTE Sport, mainly because a few of its drivers have recently become factory juniors, those being Benjamin Hites and someone with an incredibly bright future ahead of him, Jaden Conwright. The other two drivers are Don Yount and Marcus Paltela. British-based team in Inception Racing, albeit run by Optimum Motorsports, took an unexpected dive into IMSA last year at Petit Le Mans after their hectic calendar had a rare free weekend. It's resulted in a full season of IMSA this year. Brendan Arib, Ollie Milroy and Frederick Shandor will be joined by talented South African Jordan Pepper in the McLaren. Making their race debut in the US, let alone IMSA, the German-based team in Dresden, T3 Motorsport, will enter the Daytona 24 Hours in a partnership with Trans Am outfit Southern Motorsports. Misha Goldberg also runs in the Trans Am series, albeit not with Southern Motorsports, but partnering him is Matteo Larena, Maximilian Paul, and the team's trump card, Franck Pereira. And we get to the end of our exhaustive list of teams and drivers with GMG Racing. Not IMSA debutants, but this is just their 5th IMSA race after mainly garnering success in various other GT series around the world. Our final 4 drivers on this list are Kyle Washington, a very fast bronze driver in James Sapronis, Klaus Bachler, and someone who has a very diverse racing career, Jerome Blakemolen. Well, we're almost at the end of what I imagine is a lengthy video. However, just before we go, I'll give you the details of how you can watch this race and a prediction of what I think will be the top 3 in each class. So, if you live in America, then the race will be on NBC TV channels, or on the streaming service that NBC has, called Peacock. If you live outside of the US, then the full race is live on IMSA.tv, on the IMSA website, for free. That is unless you live in a country where there is a TV deal in place, which isn't many, but helpfully for all those folks that do, IMSA has a dedicated page on their website that shows where the TV deals are in the world, and what channels you need to be on. As for when the race starts, it's at 1:30 PM Eastern US time. Now, what that is for people who don't live in Eastern US, I don't know, but I do know the best way to find out is by doing a time converter on Daytona at 1:30 PM and see what time it is from there. On to my predictions. I don't know why, but in DPI I just have this feeling that somehow the JDC Miller car will be in 3rd place. Again, not sure why, but it's just a feeling I have. In 2nd, I think the Wayne Taylor Acura will once again show why they are so good at Daytona, and that the pace of all 4 drivers will be the most consistent of all the cars. In 1st place, and whilst I'm not saying any of the other teams have worse driver lineups, but I just look at the 01 Cadillac and think, that is just unbeatable. The blend of speed and experience, and seeing how close the team came to winning it last year and wanting to get vengeance for it, leads me to think that they'll be on their way to getting some fancy watches. In terms of my top 3 for LMP2, I'm saying Racing Team Nederland in 3rd, and here's why I think most people would beg to differ on my view, but here we go. The Dragon Speed, mostly all IndyCar lineup in 2nd, and then in 1st, it's the G-Drive with Algarve Pro Racing entry, number 68. I'll try and offer an explanation before you type in the comment section. I believe that the driver lineup from both the 81 and 68 is equally as good. I know Colton and Pato are 2 of IndyCar's brightest talents, but I would say that one, Rene Rast is as good as those 2, but you also have to remember that the bronze rated driver in an LMP2 team matters, and Francois is a really good bronze driver. I'm not saying Eric isn't a good driver, I'm just saying I think Francois is one of the best bronze drivers racing at the moment. That's just my view, and like all of my predictions, you're allowed to think differently, and I imagine that a lot of you will disagree with this prediction, but that's fine with me, and I look forward to seeing what you lot think. I wouldn't say that there is a clear favourite in LMP3, however, after thinking about it I came to this conclusion. In 3rd is the number 26 Mjolnir Duquesne, 2nd is the number 6 Mjolnir Duquesne, but not by much, over my winner prediction of Andretti Autosport. It probably is the best driver lineup of LMP3, and also it is Andretti Autosport. I think the number 6 Mjolnir car has got some great drivers like Joel Miller and Moritz Kranz, who is very much underrated. I just don't think there are any weak links in the Andretti Ligier though. But I think it will be close. This prediction is based on if the Corvettes are of the same or similar pace to the other GTD/GT3 cars. Assuming this happens, I think 3rd will go to the Risi Competizione Ferrari, 2nd will be the number 24 BMW M4, then in 1st, for me, even though this is the team's IMSA debut, I find it hard to see the KCMG Porsche not taking a victory in this race. As soon as I saw the lineup for KCMG, my first thought was, that is a winning combination. KCMG are experienced with the Porsche, its drivers know it like the back of their hand, and are extremely quick pedallers in them, as well as having a very good knowledge of Daytona as well. So, assuming the car has no mechanical issues, I just can't see them not winning. To me, GTD will be the most competitive class, and with 22 cars in it, there will be lots to keep track of. I've changed my mind about the top 3 several times, as there are about 15 plus cars which I think have a realistic shot of getting on the podium. However, this is what I have stuck with. In third is the AF Corsa Ferrari number 21, in second, and this might surprise some people, the number 98 Aston Martin, then in first is the Synergy 1 Mercedes. I chose this based on a few reasons. 1, Kenny is a consistent bronze driver and knows the Mercedes well. 2, the experience of all the drivers with knowing the characteristics of the Mercedes and finding its strengths and making the most of them. And 3, I think Raffaele Marcello as a driver is one of racing's best at the moment. I look forward to seeing what you think in the comments, but we better end it here because it's nearly 30 minutes. Thank you all very much for watching this video. I hope you found it productive and helpful with understanding this race and what to expect, but mainly I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked any of the photos that have been shown in this video, then the photo credits have been rolling across the bottom of the screen, so you can go and check out all the portfolios of them. However, until the next video, thank you very much for watching, and enjoy the race, and enjoy the rest of your day.